All right, you've learned some AWS vocabulary, some of the concepts behind cloud computing, as well as some of the specifics around cloud identity and access management. As a refresher, let's take a look at the architecture diagram we'll be building out. You'll remember that it's fairly complicated at a glance. There are many different services working together to host this solution, and to get this entire thing built out this way will take some time and understanding. You'll get the opportunity to see how each piece is built throughout the upcoming lessons. What I want to do now is show you how we are going to host our employee directory application using a service called Amazon EC2, which has been mentioned in previous videos. I find that the best way for me to explain to you how these services work is to show you how they work. So, what we are going to do is we are going to call Ceph in here to launch an Amazon EC2 instance and host the employee directory application using the defaults provided by AWS. AWS provides you with something called a default VPC, which is a private network for your AWS resources. Every EC2 instance you launch using AWS must live inside of a network. So in order to complete this demo with the limited amount of information that we have shown you about AWS services, we will be using the default network provided by AWS, and we will accept most of the default values for launching an EC2 instance. Let's bring Ceph in for some help with this one. Hey, Ceph.
Hey, Morgan. Is it time to launch our first EC2 instance?
It is. We'll be using the default VPC to launch this first instance, and we will configure the bare minimum to get our application up and running. Sound good?
Yep, I got it. Let's get started. I'm already in the EC2 management console, and I will navigate to the service Amazon EC2. As Morgan already mentioned, Amazon EC2 is a compute service that allows you to host virtual machines. You'll learn a lot about this topic coming up soon, but for now, we are going to simply create an EC2 instance to try and help you wrap your mind around using AWS services on demand. From here, we'll launch a new EC2 instance. An instance is just what we call one single virtual machine. Now we have to select the configurations for this EC2 instance. You will go over these configurations in detail later. We can give this instance a name. I'll call it Employee Web App, and then we will select the free tier eligible options using a Linux AMI or Amazon machine image. And then scrolling down to the next section, we will select the free tier eligible T2 Micro for the instance type. Next, we normally need to select a key pair. This would be used to SSH into the instance. But we won't need to do this, so I'm going to select Proceed without a key pair and continue scrolling to the network settings. Here, we will select the network, so looking at network settings, we will click Edit. Then we can select the VPC and subnet for this instance, and as we discussed earlier, we will use the default VPC and leave the subnet at No Preference. The default VPC has configurations in place that make this experimentation process a lot easier when you're first getting started with AWS. Again, we will define all of these things later. Continuing on with network settings, we will create a new security group, which is an instance-level firewall that will allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic in to reach the instance. So we will add inbound rules for both of those. Now we will scroll down and expand Advanced Details. We will accept most of the defaults here except the IAM instance profile and user data, which we will provide a value for. For the IAM instance profile, we will use the IAM role that will be used by the application, though this won't come into play until later when we have our S3 bucket created. But for now, let's click the dropdown and select that IAM role. Now, scrolling down to the user data, this is a script that is going to run when the instance boots up. Let's go ahead and paste in our user data script. This script will download the source code for the app, start the web server, and kick off the application code so it's ready to start handling requests. While you could have launched the instance, then connected to it via SSH, configured and started your application manually, we have decided to use a script to automate this process on launch. All right, now we can click Launch Instance. It can take a few minutes for the instance to boot up, so let's wait for that. And now it's up and running. To access the instance, copy the IP address from the details listed below, paste it into a new browser tab, and there you go. It's up and ready to go. Morgan, what do you think?
That looked great. It's exactly what I would expect at this point because there is no data being served from a database. So I expect to see just a home page with no info. So that's great. Thank you, Seth, for walking us through that. In upcoming lessons, we will discuss the specifics of not only EC2, but also networking on AWS, and you'll understand how everything we just kind of glossed over actually works. So stay tuned.